session where we have to pass bills. I think you've probably heard that, assuming the weather's good, tomorrow we're going to do our final day of session out on the south side of the Capitol. We just want to make sure that the people that are retiring can give their retiring speech to all of the senators. So it's going to be pretty unique, and that'll be I think a historic moment as we're trying to figure out how to do things safely with COVID. But as far as today, obviously the bonding bill is still live. There's a flurry of negotiations like there always is at the end, which still leaves me hope that we will have the bonding bill, some of the tax provisions I talked about, and then there's still some spending items that there are conversations going on about. But I always want things to be done sooner than they are, and it always seems to be what it is right now. And then if you go back to last night, we did pass the modified contract, which basically said for the state workers that they get last year's salary and benefits. They don't get this year, July 1 salary increase, but we allow the steps to happen. And so we feel like it's a fair approach to making sure that our state workers are treated fairly. But also, as we recognize roughly a $4 billion downturn of revenue coming into the state in less than 2 months, we know that we have to be very, very careful. I do hope that the governor, like other governors, Wisconsin, California, that they start working, or he and his agency start thinking about cutting some of the agencies. They were 5% cuts across agencies in some of these other states. It would be a very wise thing to do now, so that as we approach next January, we're in a much, much better spot to balance the budget. As you all know, we can't just print money. And so it's either reducing spending or increasing revenue. And so we think it's about reducing spending right now. So with that, I can open up questions about where I think we're at, or anything you want. I'm not going to call on you guys take turns.
Can I go first? I'm Kevin Featherly.
Yep.
Sir Gazelka, I'm a little confused about something that happened on the House floor yesterday. They passed a corrections bill that had no companion. I see that bill is now laid on the table this morning in the Senate, but I talked to Chair Mariani. He said there is no agreement between the House and Senate on this thing. What's going on with that bill?
Well, you have to ask the House why they put in so many controversial things that have had no conversation over here. You can make your own judgment about whether that's a political posturing or not, but we're in the Senate. We're doing our best to work on the things that we can get done. Yes, there are some things that probably the other side won't agree on, but I don't think you're going to see any major pieces that the other side disagrees with. We just don't have time, so we want to focus on the things that we can agree on, like a bonding bill, if that happens, taxes and things of that nature.
May I follow up with that very quickly?
Yeah.
That was a $22 million bill. Was it about the money? Was it about the additional authority that it wanted to grant to the commissioner to release prisoners? Was it all of the above that really the Senate found unpalatable?
It's not all of the above, but certainly we are opposed to releasing prisoners right now. There isn't a dramatic COVID populations everywhere getting COVID. And what I would say is the governor has given a lot of executive orders. If he wants, that would be something that he can do an executive order for. But we know that the commissioner has, I believe, a lot of authority if people are within the last 90 days of their time in prison, that there can be releases that he can choose to do on it by himself. And so that would be one of the issues that we disagree with. But there was a lot of policy that was never really discussed on our side. And so that, that's just what they chose to do.
Thank you. I'll mute now.
I'm not reading the who wants to go, so just pipe in and then we'll figure it out.
Senator, this is Peter Callahan. In the capital budget meeting yesterday, the chair said that housing was being negotiated separately and perhaps would be run separately as a separate bill, or at some point be merged back into the bill he is working on, which could explain why his bill only had $2 million in housing. Can you explain a little bit as to what's going on with that? He suggested there were negotiations with Westrom and Houseman going on.
Yeah, and also Senator Draheim and another representative were working on that. We had a number of policy provisions for reform that we feel are very, very important. And so that's where the conversation, the people that are experts and most passionate about that area, we wanted working together. It is something that we could do separately because I believe the Senate can send that to the House. The bonding bill itself has to come from the House to the Senate. The tax bill has to come from the House to the Senate. And so that's why we're dividing that out. There is the potential that it could be within that, depending on how things come together here at the end. I think I said yesterday that all 4 legislative leaders and their caucuses have to agree to a bonding bill, or there is no bonding bill. And if there's no bonding bill, there's likely no tax bill or any additional spending. And so it's all lumped together. The 4 leaders, we are going to be getting together here within the next hour or so. And so like I said, it always seems to be this way. The whole rest of my life, I'm early, and this one, it's always this time.
Okay, can I follow up? I'm sorry, Brian. Can I follow up, though? The fact that Draheim is involved tells me that you are bringing in his regulatory relief, housing regulatory relief language that he worked on over the interim into the affordable housing bonding issue. Is that, am I reading that right?
That is correct. It's definitely that's what we're having a conversation about. Is there any reform? And you all probably know there's been some comparisons to how much housing costs in Minnesota versus Wisconsin. That why are we dramatically higher in our costs? And so that was why we set up that sub or task force. Or I'm not sure if it was a task force or subcommittee to look at that issue. And some of those ideas that came out of that is what we're trying to move forward. And we'll see. I mean, they are having a good, robust conversation. And that's why we wanted to leave it off to the bonding bill at this time.
Senator, have there been discussions at this point yet about if, when, and under what circumstances the governor would call you back into special session short of the automatic requirement if he were to extend the emergency powers?
So I've had conversations with the governor every day now. We haven't directly had that conversation. My hope is that we get done when we're supposed to get done, and that's midnight tonight. And so that if there is a special session in the future, that's just about COVID-related things, or the governor wants to extend his emergency powers, which would be June 12th. And so I'd rather focus right there right now, because that's it's my priority. It's my priority every year. And so I'm trying to move everybody to that spot. With doing everything on Zoom and very few meetings together, that is just harder. And so we'll see how it plays out, but I feel like there is at least movement to see if we can finish.
I have a question if nobody else does. This is
Go
Kevin.
ahead.
Returning to my earlier subject, but with a slightly broader field of vision. It looked like that bill going forward with no companion, to me, it sounded like a violation of what I took to be sort of a four corners agreement, that bills didn't reach the floors unless there was agreement among all four caucuses, and that didn't happen here. Was that a violation of agreement? I was told today there was no such agreement. I was under the understanding there was. What can you alleviate my confusion on that point?
Now, very good question. And up until we started moving back into a pattern of meeting every 3 days according to the Constitution, prior to that time, there was a requirement of the four leaders agreeing. And then once we got back to our normal routine, the majorities pretty much drive the agenda. From the Senate's perspective, I'm not trying to send any scuds. We're just trying to do policy that works, that's good for Minnesota, that both sides can agree to. We don't have time for that. The Senate is just a different body. We deliberate. We tend to work together. The conversations on the floor are absolutely more respectful and more collaborative. Yes, we disagree, but it's just a different way of doing it. And so, but there was no violation there, like you asked.
Thank
Senator Gazelka, Tom Hauser asked the question. He says his mic isn't working, but he wants to know if the House doesn't go along with the bill you passed on state contracts, will that have the effect of nullifying the second year of the pay raise anyway?
So there will be a number of interpretations. We've asked our legal counsel, pretty much the House and Senate, we believe, have to agree to the language we did, or there was no ratification of any kind, because we have two different positions. And I did call out to the governor's staff and said, we want to work with you to work through our solution that we think is fair. And so at the end of May 18th, they go backwards and lose last July's pay raise. And so we are committed. We want to work with the unions and the governor and the House to make sure they get last year's pay raise and all the benefit adjustments from last year and the steps this year, but not the pay raise in July of this upcoming year. And so we're committed to that, and we hope that they will work with us to get that done. We think it's important. We care about what the state workers do and their efforts, and we felt like they deserve the money, but the shortfall is very, very serious. And the last thing I'll say about that is I think I mentioned it, but we put in that if there's a surplus all the way into next June, I believe it was, we would retroactively give those salary adjustments. So it's not about wanting to give those salaries. We want to, but we also recognize that with 600,000+ people unemployed and people losing their businesses, that there's no way that we can afford to do that right now unless we can turn this around. And the best thing we can do is open up the rest of everything. Everybody practice safe distancing. Don't be afraid to go out there and live your life safely. That will help the economy get up and going.
Senator, it's Theo Keefe here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Didn't know if my mic was.
Yeah, I hear you, Theo.
Okay. Beyond that issue of the pay raises, which sounds like you're saying that it has to get done by tonight, or else.
Theo, I apologize, but I can't quite hear you. Let me turn you up. We'll see if we can get help here. All right, try one more time.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Okay. Here, I'm trying to speak as loudly as I can. Beyond that issue of the pay raises, which you're saying if it doesn't get done by tonight, they don't get ratified. Do you sense that there is everybody is feeling less pressure today, given the fact that than a typical end of session, given the fact that you'll almost certainly be back in special session?
Well, I don't think so, because many of us feel like we should get our work done on time. I think that's what people expect, and they're disappointed when we don't. The problem with COVID and doing many things by Zoom is some of the intensity of the people around us that bring the pressure to help us get to the end. None of that's here. So people aren't, out in the hallways, and the different parts of the end of session that just isn't there causes some people maybe not to feel the pressure. But I feel like it's my responsibility as leader to do my part to navigate, to finish the things that we need to do. I believe the speaker feels the same way. And so we're committed to it. But like I said, it happens way too often that we get the agreement, but we got to set up some other day, a day later or 2 days later to finish it. But that's not what I'm aiming at. I'm aiming at for midnight tonight. And so the next few hours of meetings is really important.
Senator, has there been agreement reached between you and the majority in the House on the size of a bonding bill yet?
Yes, but I'm not going to tell you.
Why not?
Because I'm trying to work with the two minorities as well.
But doesn't the public deserve some accounting for it? I mean, this is a lot of public taxpayer money that would go towards servicing this debt.
I appreciate that, but I haven't, unless we're talking together, I don't think it's fair. But I appreciate the question. That I'm just giving you a straight answer.
Senator, Senator, this is Peter again.
Yeah.
I confess I don't know state collective bargaining law well enough to know the answer to this, and hoping you do. It's my understanding that once you adjourn the regular session of the legislature tonight, those contracts are voided. However, would the administration have the legal authority to negotiate a new contract starting Monday and bring that back to the legislature at some point for ratification? Or must they wait until 2021 to start that cycle over again?
No, they can start right now. And frankly, I would even be open to a memorandum of understanding, if we're working in good faith towards what we passed in the Senate, to figure out a way so that they don't go backwards. I want to work with the governor and his team and the House. We want them to keep last year's raise. And so we're willing to cooperate on our side. I've been saying that for at least 2 weeks and maybe longer. And we're asking them to help us get to that solution. Hang on. David, you sounded like a chipmunk. Try again.
No.
It's awesome. I hope everybody else hears what I hear.
Dave, if you go ahead and type your message in the chat, I'll point it out to Senator Gazelka.
That was awesome. I hope we got that recorded. I'm going to send it back to you.
All right. If someone else has a question, feel free to jump in while Dave types his out here.
I've got a quick question. As we go forward, are we going to see the return of the triumvirate at any level? Are we going to see the governor, you, and the House Speaker making massive decisions on behalf of the legislature and the government going forward?
Well, first of all, this isn't the big 2-year budget. This is just a lot of little things that we're working on. And so I know that tax committee chairs, I know, are working together on that. The bonding chairs are working on theirs. Senator Paul Anderson and Senator Eric Pratt are working with the commissioner on the business grants. I mean, everywhere we go, Senator Abler's working on a number of things, Senator Benson is. And so it's really, the tough part is we're all spread out. And so I have not personally met with the governor since COVID-19. And so there's not going to be any of that. It's just how do we close these deals while we're doing phone calls and Zoom, but we have lots of people working on a lot of little projects.
Okay, and then Dave Orrick's question is, will there be a lottery fund bill or not? And this is going to be our last question, folks.
I haven't been following it, so I don't know how close it is. So there's also a Canterbury one, a compromise to address some of the COVID issues that I believe the tribes have been neutral on. So that's another one that's still alive as well. So with that, I'd like to talk more, but I've got a negotiation right now. So thank you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.